to tie love to a feeling only. But this text teaches us that even when we don't feel like love, even when our brothers and sisters have not treated us in a way that would make us want to respond in a loving manner, what Jesus is saying to his disciples is that we still need to obey God by sacrificing ourselves for the sake of others. Amen. Let me say that one more time. Even when you don't feel like love, even when your brother and sister has not walked in a loving manner, it is your responsibility to do what Christ says. Love one another as I have loved you. I know it's tight, but it's right, brothers and sisters. And the reality is that the cross, when you consider the cross, it didn't feel good to Jesus. Y'all quiet this morning. When Christ carried the cross on his shoulder, when he was beaten, when he was ridiculed, when he had the hairs of his beard pulled out of his chin, when the Bible depicts him as one that was so mangled in the face that he did not look recognizable, none of that felt good to him, but it didn't stop him from going to the cross. I'll tell you why he did it. Jesus was willing to endure all of the punishment. He was willing to endure all of the hatred. He was willing to endure all of the physical torment. Why? Because he was focused, brothers and sisters, on the future joy of having all of us who are believers to spend eternity with him. Might I suggest to you, while you are sitting there quiet, that's reason for all of us to give God praise. Why? Because he went through all of that then so that we could spend eternity with him. All I'm saying to you, brothers and sisters, that Jesus Christ himself says that you got to love one another as I have loved you. He sets the standard for love. He says, I died for you. That was my full expression of love towards you. Jesus Christ says here in this text that it's not loving one another is not about how you feel, but it's about honoring God by sacrificing your selfishness for the good of your brother or sister in the Lord. That even saying that, hearing that doesn't feel good. I know. Because the truth is, you're hearing pastors say that you're selfish. And the reality is that all of us, to a certain degree, are selfish. We want what we want when we want it. Here Jesus says, true love for your brother or sister is demonstrated in your willingness to sacrifice your desires for the good of others. Not only does he set the standard for love, but verse 13, as we're looking at this idea of loving one another as Jesus Christ loved us, not only does he set the standard for love, but in verse 13, notice what he says. And I've always found verse 13 very intriguing because he says it like this: greater love has no one than this, that someone lay down his life for his friends. Down in verse 12, does he set the standard for love? And here in verse 13, what he does, he shares the scope for love. He says, greater love had no man than this, that he would lay down his life for his friends. In this context, Jesus is not speaking about you loving sinners, but he is talking about you loving brothers and sisters in the Lord. He himself will demonstrate to his disciples how much he loved them in just a few short hours. Because this is Thursday night, Friday morning is coming. Now, I want to tell you something, brothers and sisters. What he did for us is the highest standard of love for one another. But the reality is that, yes, you and I, we cannot die and serve as a substitute for our brothers and sisters' sins. And the truth is, what Jesus does, he says, I'm not asking you to die a physical death for one another. But what Jesus does, he sets the scope for our love by saying we should be willing to lay down our lives for one another. But wait a minute, Pastor. I know many of you all are thinking to yourself, there's no way I'm laying down my life for somebody else. As quiet as it is kept, I know you've heard this before. You're thinking to yourself, Pastor, there's no way I'm laying down my life for somebody else. Pastor, I barely even give blood when they ask us to give blood for the Red Cross. What make you think that I'm going to lay down my life for somebody else? But let me help you ease your mind hearing this text. This is not about this humongous, over-the-top experience that many of you all may be thinking of. This is not, Jesus is not saying, I'm asking you, I'm commanding you as a believer to run into a burning building and save another believer. I'm not saying that you have to lay on the operating table and give up a kidney for somebody who's in need. But the reality, brothers and sisters, this is more about you and me confronting the daily selfishness that we struggle with every day. So Jesus says, in a nutshell, you may not like your brother or sister, but you do have to say no to your selfishness to help them become all that God wants them to be. In other words, Jesus says, when it comes to laying down your life, this is not saying that you have to physically go run in front of a bus to save their life. But what he says is that you have to be willing to say no to some things that would make you feel good and say yes to things that would be a sacrifice to your brother or sister, because when you do that, it helps them become all that God has called them to be. I wish I had one witness in here this morning. Some of us, just hearing that, makes us cringe. We're thinking, I need to pull up the Baptist finger and take my exit. Because, Pastor, you just said to me that I've got to sacrifice my needs for somebody else. Yes. Pastor, you just told me that I've got to lay down my wants and desires to help somebody else. Yes. Pastor, you're saying that I have to deny myself. Yes, I'm saying all of that. That's what Jesus is saying to us. He says we have to be willing to face and confront our daily selfishness. He says to husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church. That ain't easy, but he says do it. He says to wives, submit to your own husbands. That ain't easy, but he says do it. He says to all of us as believers that we ought to trust in him with all of our heart. And what he's saying to us here in verse 12, 13, and 17 is that the truest, first of all, the first characteristic of knowing whether or not he would call you his friend is demonstrated in your willingness to love others as he has loved us. Now does he share with us that the first characteristic is that we have to love others as Christ has loved us. But he says in verse 14, he says, the second characteristic is this: friends of Jesus simply obey his commandments. He says in verse 14, and I love this, he says, you are my friends if you do what I command you to do. You are my friends if you do what he says, if you demonstrate a willingness to love others like I have loved you, that's the first characteristic. But he says, moving to the next characteristic, he says, friends of mine, obey his commandments. You know, whenever I stand to preach or whenever I'm teaching, and I declare what God has called us to do, it has always been intriguing to me the response of people who are believers. Because oftentimes what he is calling us to do goes contrary to what many of us have been led to believe this life as a believer is all about. See, many of us were led to believe that once I give the preacher my hand and God my heart, that all will be well. I can tiptoe through the tulip, that there will be no suffering, that things will be fine. But contrary to popular belief, when it comes to obeying what God has called us to obey, the truth is it's not going to feel good all the time. Amen. I wish I had about 3 believers in here that help me. When it comes to doing what God has called us to do, sometimes you may have to cry. Sometimes it may cause you to have to lay your desires aside. There are going to be times where he calls us and commands us to do something that in your natural state of mind, you're thinking to yourself, God, are you crazy? What I love about God is that God will never command us to do something that's not going to draw us closer to him. So he says, friends of his, not only love as he loved, but friends of his obey his commandment. What I love about this is that it literally repeats the thought of John chapter 15, verse 10, because he says just a few verses earlier, he says, if you keep my commandments, you will abide in my love, just as I have kept my Father's commandments and abide in his love. Here's what you have to understand, brothers and sisters. It doesn't mean that obedience makes you Jesus' friend as if you can earn his friendship. But what it does describe is what friends of Jesus do. This is what they do. They obey him. Like, you can't obey him enough, and that is what makes you his friend, because none of us can earn his friendship. So what he says is that you are my friend because you obey me. It's almost as if many of us, we have become friends with people because of the things that we have done. Oh, you gave me $5. You loaned me this, you did that. So now I'm your friend. Jesus says, no, that's not how it works. He says, my friends obey my commandments. Not obey my commandments and you can become my friend, but he says, my friends, they obey my commandments. In other words, I'm obeying his commandment because I love the intimate relationship that we have with one another. Amen. The Bible says, Psalm 25, verse 14, it says, the friendship of the Lord is for those who fear him and makes known to them his covenant. So now the question on the table is very clear. Are we doing what he has commanded us to do? Let that sit for a moment. Are we doing what he's commanded us to do? Long gone are the days of just coming to church and shouting all over the building and getting an emotional high and leaving in worse shape than you did when you came. But now the question is, if we're going to grow up and be disciples, I love this. If we're going to grow up and be who God has called us to be, if we're going to grow up and make an impact in the kingdom and for the kingdom, the question that we must all ask ourselves, am I doing what he has commanded me to do? He says, I'm almost finished. He says, friends of mine, love as I love you. He said, friends of mine, obey my commandments. But then thirdly, he says, friends of Jesus, understand the truths that he has made known from his Father. That's what he says in John chapter 15, verse 15. He says, no longer do I call you servants, for the servant does not know what his master is doing. But I have called you friends, for all that I have heard from my Father, I have made known to you. I like that he says, I'm not calling you servants any longer, but I'm calling you my friend. Watch this. Even though Jesus elevates the disciples from being slaves or servants to being friends, the truth is the master-slave relationship does not end there, because in John chapter 15, verse 20, Jesus implies that he is the master and there are his slaves. But here's the reason why you and I can shout, because if you are a friend of his, he says there is a difference between being a servant and being my friend. Here's the difference between the two. He says, as a master, what would happen is the master could command the slave. The servant would say something like, I need you to go fix dinner for 50 guests that are going to be coming this evening. He makes that command, but he doesn't have to explain to him why he's making the command. That's a master-slave or master-servant relationship. And the reality is that when you consider that kind of relationship, the slave or the servant is nothing more than an instrument of the master's will to do what they are told to do without question. In other words, it's as if the master says to the servant or to the slave, go do it because I said so. But a master who views himself as a friend to his slave or to his servant, would do quite the opposite. Whatever he's requiring him or her to do, he would follow it up by explaining the importance of carrying out the instruction. The point that Jesus is making in this text is that he has openly shared with his disciples the things that he has heard from the Father. And when he says all things, he means all things necessary for them to know at this point. Jesus says, you have made the transition from doing what I say because I said to doing what I say because we are friends. He says, and the reality, brothers and sisters, in verse 15, he says, if you were just a slave, if you were just a servant, I would not feel obligated to tell you